Remembering the one and only Marilyn Monroe, her remarkable life, and her tragic death. I'm Jane Pauley, and this is Time and Again.
The following program is brought to you in living color. Ladies and gentlemen, a good evening to you.
This is Lowell Thomas in New York.
The Beatles emerged on the
And so, my fellow Americans,
I'm Chet Huntley, your host on...
We have 73 television cameras on Mayday Girl.
President Nixon is actively...
one small step for man.
The label sex symbol is handed out pretty freely these days. Every starlet or Hollywood hunk with a few screen credits and an attitude seems to qualify. But the title belongs to one person above all others, someone who first stepped into the national spotlight almost half a century ago, and whose image, vitality, and beauty are still with us long after her death. She is Marilyn Monroe, of course, our subject tonight on Time and Again. Marilyn Monroe was the creation of a young woman named Norma Jean. Norma Jean Mortensen at first, after her father, who abandoned her, then Baker, after her mother, mentally ill and institutionalized, leaving Norma Jean to a childhood of poverty, foster homes, sexual abuse, and neglect. Norma Jean began modeling as a teenager, dyeing her hair blonde. She was soon spotted by a talent scout from 20th Century Fox, who signed her to a contract and changed her name to Marilyn Monroe. That was in the late 40s. Within a few years, Monroe was a huge star, an international sensation. Here she is in February 1954, at the height of her popularity, entertaining American troops in Korea.
And we all lose our charms in the end. We're cut or pear-shaped, these rocks don't lose their shape. Diamonds are a girl's best friend. Cartier. May come a time when Lassy's a lawyer, but diamonds are a girl's best friend. Get that I know so nice. He's your guy when stocks are high, but beware when they start to descend. It's then that those louses go back to their spouses. Diamonds are a girl's best friend. I've heard of affairs that are strictly platonic, but diamonds are a girl's best friend. Affairs that you must keep Masonic are better bets. If little pets get big baguettes, time rolls on, and youth is gone, and you can't straighten up when you fail. But stiff like a stiff-knee, stand straight and look. Won't regret it. Come and get it.
Marilyn Monroe entertaining the troops in 1954, the year of her brief second marriage to baseball legend Joe DiMaggio. Monroe married her first husband in 1942 when she was just 16. Monroe's third husband was Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright Arthur Miller, author of The Crucible and Death of a Salesman. He was 11 years her senior. Here's the couple in July 1956, just days after their wedding. They had announced their engagement only 3 weeks before.
So you met him last year, huh? Have you been engaged long?
No, just a few days.
How long ago did you decide to get married? I mean, was there a talk about it before the formal engagement?
Well, a little, maybe.
Well, who proposed first?
Well, I really believe he took the initiative, but we were both sort of talking at the same time. Simultaneously.
Did you,
When are you getting married, Miss Monroe? It'll be sometime between now and the 13th of July.
Where, do you
know? No, I'm not sure where.
What are you doing on the 13th of July?
I'll be flying to London.
Work on the picture with Olivier?
Yeah. Is Mr. Miller going with you? I hope you'll be with me, yes.
That's where you plan to honeymoon? In England?
Oh, yes.
Miss Monroe, do you think your marriage plans are going to change your career any?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, Mr. Miller's a playwright, and I think he would like for me to be a good actress, too, as much as I would like to be. When are you planning to have some children? Well, I'm not married yet, dear.
Miss Monroe, this is a rather personal question, but is there anything in particular about Mr. Miller that attracted you?
Have you seen him?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Miller, why did you file an application for passport? I wanted to go to England. For what reason? You go. We'd like you. I wanted to be with the woman who was going to be my wife. Marilyn Monroe? That's correct. When are you going to be married? I don't know right now. I haven't had a minute to think, but it'll be short. Where? New York or Connecticut. New York or Connecticut. You say shortly, you think within the month? Yes. Do you have her in mind for any particular part? Are you going to write a play for her? I wish I could, but I've never been able to write a play for any actor. If you fit one of the characters, you've got the job.
Miller did write something for Marilyn Monroe, the screenplay for the 1961 film The Misfits, co-starring Clark Gable. 1 week after it opened, the couple divorced. The Misfits was Monroe's last film. When we come back, an unforgettable happy birthday to President John F. Kennedy, and one of Marilyn's first films, remembered by Groucho Marx. On May 19, 1962, Marilyn Monroe had fewer than 3 months to live. She was just days away from being fired by 20th Century Fox for repeatedly failing to show up for filming of her latest movie, prophetically called Something's Got to Give. She was depressed, reclusive, taking pills and seeing a psychiatrist. And on May 19, 1962, she delivered the most unforgettable rendition of Happy Birthday that anyone has ever heard. Wearing a skin-tight, flesh-colored gown her designer had literally sewn her into just moments before, Monroe sang to John F. Kennedy at a star-studded Democratic Party fundraiser in New York City, 10 days before the president's 45th birthday.
I got a telegram tonight which said, in honor of your birthday, I believe that you should get a rise in pay. Signed, Roger. And then it said, P.S. My birthday's next month. So, but we're grateful to them, to Bobby Darin, and to Miss Carroll, who was going to come, and to Miss Monroe, who left a picture to come all the way east, and I can now retire from politics after having had Happy Birthday sung to me in such a sweet and wholesome way.
Rumors have persisted ever since the deaths of Marilyn Monroe and John F. Kennedy that the two were romantically linked. The truth may never be known. Monroe's birthday tribute to Kennedy came just days before her own 36th birthday. She was near the end of her career and her life. Let's return for a minute to the beginning of her career and one of her very first screen appearances at age 22, a bit part in a 1949 film called Love Happy. Monroe was playing opposite none other than Groucho Marx, who remembered the occasion vividly more than 14 years later.
But I want to tell you about Marilyn Monroe. When we did one picture in which she had a bit, she got $100 for one day's work. You can imagine how long ago this was. And Lester Cowan, who was producing the picture, he called me up because I was going to do the scene with Marilyn. He called me up and he said, I wish you'd come over to the studio tomorrow to my office because we're going to try out 3 girls for the part in this picture. I think it was called Love Happy or something. A terrible picture. So I sat there with Lester and the 3 girls were there. I was introduced to them. And he says, now the first girl, walk. And she walked across from one end to the other. He says, very nice. He says, now the second girl, walk. And she did it too. And then the third one. He says, now you walk across. And he says, well, which one do you like the best? I says, you're kidding, aren't you? Now, how can you take anybody except that last girl? Well, the whole room revolved when she walked. And it was Marilyn Monroe. And she got $100. And then we quit shooting at 5. And she got $25 extra for going to a couple of gas stations. They were plugging some kind of gas or something, which was part of the picture or something. And she got $25 extra for, they took snapshots of her from 6 to 8 o'clock. She was a wonderful girl, really. Very nice girl.
Come in.
Is there anything I can do for you? What a ridiculous statement.
Mr. Grunion, I want you to help me.
I have a little sand left. What seems to be the trouble?
Some men are following me.
Really? I can't understand why.
I advise you to leave.
I'll take you down to the bus station. Oh, if I'm not back tonight, go ahead without me. That's been the history of all my romances.
Within a few years of her 1949 walk-on with Groucho, Marilyn Monroe was a major star. One of her greatest, most enduring films was 1959's Some Like It Hot, directed by Billy Wilder and co-starring Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis.
One cannot talk about Some Like It Hot without asking about Marilyn Monroe. Was, as legend has it, she always late to the set? Was she uncertain of her lines? Was there take after take after take of each scene?
She shoot at 9 o'clock call. Sometimes she will show up like, let's say, 11:30, 12. But they had to be ready, standing there on those high heels, kind of, with the nosebleed. And it really hurts, you know. It really hurts, you know, to stand. And they had to be ready because at one time we had 83 takes where she had that line, where's that bourbon?
Where's that bourbon? Oh, there it is.
She had that one line, and she always forgot it line.
Forgot the drawer was in?
83 times.
83? Are you kidding me?
I'm
No,
not
no.
kidding you. And
She
after
forgot the
take
drawer?
40, I took her to the side, and I said, Marilyn, don't worry. And she looked at me and she said, worry about what?
But there was one other line, I don't know if you remember in there. That's one of the few times I've seen a mind as fast as Billy's really stopped dead. Somewhere in the 50s, one of those takes. And all it was those 7 words. Where is that bourbon? Oh, there it is. That's it. And she kept not getting through it, and Billy gave her at least 500 different ways to do it. All of them were legitimate. I never saw a director come up with so many things. Finally, after trying all of these different things with her, Billy said, all right, now Marilyn, possibly, and she said, don't talk to me now, I'll forget how I want to play it. Well, I'll tell you, I have never seen a director stop dead like that.
Fellow actress and friend Susan Strasberg remembers Marilyn when Time and Again continues. In the late 50s, Marilyn Monroe was eager to break free of the dumb blonde, sex pot image she had created. She didn't get much help from Hollywood, which saw money to be made in keeping things just the way they were. Marilyn went to New York and spent time studying with legendary acting teacher Lee Strasberg. You may remember him as mobster Hyman Roth in the Godfather films. Monroe grew close to Strasberg and to his daughter Susan, who remembered Marilyn on the Today Show in 1992.
It's been 30 years since Marilyn Monroe's death, yet she is arguably more popular today than when she was alive. And when she was alive, she was the quintessential Hollywood icon, the screen's foremost sex symbol. She steamed up the platform in Some Like It Hot. She sang for her supper in Bus Stop.
Oh, like magic has me in its spell.
And in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, she stirred things up as a gold-digging temptress.
On the hand may be quite continental, but diamonds are a girl's best friend.
Marilyn Monroe was a Hollywood superstar, but for Susan Strasberg, she was much more than that. In a new book called Marilyn and Me, Strasberg details the depths of Marilyn's personal problems. Marilyn was 12 years your senior, and you were just 17.
16.
16 when you first met. Just how much did she become a member of your family?
Well, she became almost like the third adopted child. I have a younger brother. And she wound up sleeping. She would come over when she was desperate, lonely, or on pills when she needed to be held. And sleep. My brother would get kicked into the living room, a couch, and she would sleep in his room. And then we shared a room together at the beach, on our beach house. And what happened was she became almost like a child as well as a student of my dad's, who was head of the Actors Studio. And because she was so much needier than I was, she got a certain kind of attention from him that, of course, I didn't get.
Is it fair to say that you resented that?
It was fair to say that I was very, very jealous of it. But the strange paradox was that I really liked her because she was so much freer, simpler, very direct than a lot of my friends. She had this kind of innocence and fun. And listen, in a day and age when we were wearing girdles, she talked about sex as if it was something natural and normal. She was very open, very vulnerable, and in a way she was just as miserable as we all were, and we were adolescents.
The time she spent with you, the last 8 years of her life, were very tough years for her. They were years of affairs, divorces, alcohol, and drug dependency. Why did her life become such a disaster?
You know what? It wasn't such a disaster because at the same time that she was addicted and the same time that some of the relationships were a disaster, and I think it's because she had no self-esteem. So no matter who loves you, if you don't love yourself, it doesn't matter. And she was so desperate for love that not getting it kept throwing her back and back. But on the other hand, she knew in the 50s, when very few of us did, that the answer to her happiness wasn't out there. It wasn't in furs. It wasn't in a mink. It wasn't in fame. It was inside. And so that at the same time that all this was going on, she really was a very gutsy, courageous lady. She made that journey inward, which is dangerous. If you think, she stood up before the women's movement. She broke away from a Hollywood studio. She stood up to the McCarthy Committee.
On behalf of her husband.
On behalf of her husband. She risked a lot.
In addition to the pearls you're wearing, she gave you some self-portraits. I want to show them. You tell us what you think they say about Marilyn Monroe.
I think that they're the two sides of Marilyn, the little girl and the glamorous movie star that people saw. And to me it means that she was aware that inside this beautiful, glamorous package, maybe she was exposing her body, but that in the end she realized that she was exposing her soul. And that, I think, is one of the reasons, by the way, that we're still so drawn to her, because she that awareness that there were these two sides. I think she said once, she called this one Lonely, and the other one she titled Life is Wonderful, So What the Hell?
Yeah. Susan Strasberg, thanks so very much.
Thank you.
Take care.
More on the life and legend of Marilyn Monroe when Time and Again continues in a moment. Welcome back to Time and Again as we look back on one of the most unforgettable figures of the 20th century, the ultimate sex symbol and a complicated, troubled human being, Marilyn Monroe. By 1961, the year of her last film, Monroe's once brilliant stardom had faded. She fought for recognition of her acting talent, struggling along the way with depression and drug abuse. She was hospitalized twice in 1961, released here on March 5th after a hospital stay of almost a month for what the public was told was simply a rest and a checkup. She was 34 years old. 17 months later, Marilyn Monroe was dead. What follows is a Monroe obituary filed just hours after her death on August 5th, 1962 by NBC's Elmer Peterson, painstakingly restored and seen here for the first time in decades.
Marilyn Monroe had lived in seclusion in her rambling Spanish-style bungalow in Los Angeles. Last night, her housekeeper, Eunice Murray, noticed that Miss Monroe still had her bedroom light on at midnight. At 3 a.m., Miss Murray found the light still on, the door locked. A physician, hurriedly summoned, broke a bedroom window, found the actress dead in bed, holding in one hand a telephone which was off its hook, with an empty bottle of sleeping pills nearby. No notes were found, but since the actress was known to have been depressed of late, a deputy coroner listed the death as an apparent suicide, pending completion of an autopsy. Police say they are not so sure that death may have been accidental. For the famous actress, it was an inauspicious end, her home sealed by the coroner, for an actress renowned as a symbol of everything glamorous in a woman, her slim body covered with a simple blue cotton blanket and carried to a mortuary in the back of a station wagon. It was the end of a career which, for all the fame she acquired, apparently brought no real lasting happiness to Miss Monroe. To the end, she was known as Hollywood's best and least understood personality. What was known about Marilyn Monroe is that she was born June 1st, 1926, at Los Angeles General Hospital, the illegitimate child of a movie cutter named Gladys Baker and a handsome Danish immigrant named Edward Mortensen. Her father disappeared before her birth. Her mother suffered a nervous breakdown afterward. So as a child, shy, insecure, Marilyn was brought up in 12 different foster homes in the very area where she was later to achieve movie stardom. At 16, she married a wartime aircraft worker named Jim Doherty to escape going into an orphanage. Divorced in 1946, she became a photographer's model, received some movie offers with no great success. But then came the big Monroe buildup as a pin-up girl in the Korean War, as a symbol of sex, as a voluptuous blonde. In the sudden way that success can strike in Hollywood, she became big box office in films like Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. She made headlines, too, by her marriage, which lasted 9 months, to baseball star Joe DiMaggio. She made headlines when she divorced DiMaggio, saying that he was cool and indifferent. For millions of movie fans, she now was being described as restless, discontented, striving, groping. She entertained American soldiers in Korea with great success, and she welcomed a role with Laurence Olivier. Then she deserted Hollywood for New York to study acting. She wound up marrying playwright Arthur Miller in 1956, a marriage that lasted slightly more than 4 years. Back in Hollywood, after treatment at 2 New York hospitals, her last 2 pictures lost money. Her perpetual puzzling tardiness continued to cause trouble until she was fired from the uncompleted film Something's Got to Give. She claimed to be sick. The studio said differently. There was talk that her bubble of fame was bursting. Negotiations were underway to have her resume her role in Something's Got to Give. Those who talked to her last say that she seemed cheerful enough about the future. It was revealed that she will be buried by arrangement alongside her grandmother, Emma Atchison, and her guardian, Grace Godward. Men like George Cukor, who directed her in the film that let her go, said today she was a great actress.
On August 8, 1962, 3 days after her death, a funeral was held for Marilyn Monroe at the Westwood Village Funeral Chapel in Hollywood. It was a small, private affair. No stars, no members of the press were invited, and fewer than 500 spectators gathered outside. Among the 25 people inside, baseball legend Joe DiMaggio, Monroe's second husband, who had helped make funeral arrangements. The music for the service included Tchaikovsky and a rendition of Over the Rainbow. Monroe's acting teacher, Lee Strasberg, eulogized Monroe, saying that in her own lifetime she created a myth of what a poor girl from a deprived background could attain. A warm human being, impulsive and shy, sensitive and in fear of rejection, yet ever avid for life and reaching out for fulfillment. Just before the coffin was closed, DiMaggio bent down to kiss Monroe, saying quietly, "I love you, I love you."
It's been 31 years since the death of Marilyn Monroe, and yet millions are still fascinated with her life, her death, and the public image created and enhanced by her work in 28 movies, work that made her America's foremost sex symbol and biggest movie star.
You kind of like that song, don't you, Mrs. Lucas?
There isn't any other song.
With all your heart, protect. This is a
kiss on the hand, baby, quite continental, but diamonds are a girl's best friend.
And look, you can see by this just how straight my direction is. River Gulch is where I started, this is where I am now, and look where I'm going. Where? Hollywood and Vine.
You the replacement for the bass and sax?
That's us, and I'm Daphne. This is Josephine.
I'm Sugar Cane.
Hi.
Sugar Cane?
Yeah, I changed. It used to be Sugar Kowalczyk.
You Polish?
Yes. I come from this musical family. My mother's a piano teacher, my father was a conductor.
Where did he conduct?
On the Baltimore and Ohio.
Marilyn's stardom was such that today a number of myths surround her life and death. In a new book called Marilyn Monroe, The Biography, author Donald Spoto attempts to separate fact from fiction, but in the process he's made some claims that are the stuff of headlines. Mr. Spoto, good morning.
Good morning.
Let me start with that headline, and then we'll work backwards a little bit. You claim that when Marilyn died in '62, she was planning to remarry Joe DiMaggio, and what do you base that?
We have all the evidence for it, Bryant. She had her wedding dress fitted. She had ordered the food and wine from her local emporium. She had told a small crew of friends. She and Joe had ordered the airline tickets for Wednesday night.
The first marriage they had, the footage we're looking at in '54, had reportedly been a struggle. Why did she want to remarry him?
8 years had passed. Both of them had grown considerably, and a friendship had, in fact, emerged during very trying times of her life.
And so you have no doubt that she was committed to this, and she was going to go to the altar once again?
No question, no question. And I think it was really, they were going to make a go of it. They were going to make a go of it very seriously.
Okay, let's talk about some of the stories that people view as gospel. That she was the plaything of the Kennedys, that she slept with JFK and Bobby and was in love with Bobby when she died.
This is, as the great writer Ben Hecht used to say, a lot of hooey. It's absolute rubbish.
She didn't sleep with him?
Marilyn Monroe never had an affair with Robert Kennedy. What we can document very firmly is that they met on 4 social occasions, always in the presence of a number of other people. But there isn't a single shred of credible evidence nor a single credible witness to the fact that there was any intimacy between them. And how do we establish this, Brian? We line up on one side of a page the whereabouts of Robert Kennedy during his tenure as Attorney General, and on the other side of the page we can line up where Marilyn Monroe was. It's very difficult to conduct an affair from 8,000 miles distance.
What about JFK?
JFK and Marilyn also met socially on 4 times, and on one of those occasions they shared a bedroom at the home of Bing Crosby in Palm Springs, Saturday, March 25th, 1962.
So it was a one-night stand, you're saying?
If you want to call it that, yeah.
Another story some view as gospel. She was in deep to the mob.
She had absolutely no connection to the mob at all. That's another item for which there isn't a single shred of evidence. In fact, quite the contrary. I spoke to people who knew members of the mob socially. It's all set forth in the book. She was never seen with them. She never had anything to do with them.
Her death. You claim it was inadvertently caused by her housekeeper, Eunice Murray, and her psychiatrist, Dr. Ralph Greenson, who you say conspired to control her. How'd they wind up killing her?
The death was a terrible, tragic accident, the result of a rectal infusion, an enema, if you will, of chloral hydrate, sometimes called knockout drops or Mickey Finn drops.
Let's set the record straight real quick. I mean, she took enemas a lot of times to control her weight.
Yes,
so this was not uncommon. Okay,
that's
go
right.
ahead. Go ahead.
That's right. What she was given was a dosage of chloral hydrate, as the toxicology report shows. As the toxicology report shows, with this vastly discolored and purplish colon, which, as Dr. Noguchi and Dr. Miner have begged over the years, must be taken into consideration. She was killed as a result of a massive, I should not say she was killed. Killed, murder, murderer are words I never use in this book. But she died as a result of a massive infusion of this drug, which interfered with the absorption and metabolizing of Nembutal.
Did Greenson and Murray know that it would have that effect on her?
Well, the doctor was a doctor. I mean, he had
So why don't you call it murder then?
He had been, because murder is a word that only a coroner's inquest can use. He's dead now, and we can't have that kind of investigation. What we can do, what the biographer can do, is to set forth precisely what happened and give it a context. Certainly he was obsessive about this woman. They had a tangled and complex relationship from which she was trying desperately to extricate herself. In fact, she had made a decision to dismiss him, as she had dismissed the housekeeper.
You say they conspired to control her. How do we define control in this case?
Well, all one has to do really is look at the kind of conduct that they exerted. Both of them systematically attempted to sever Marilyn Monroe from all of her other close friendships. They asked her, in fact required her, the doctor required her to dismiss some of her closest friends. Ralph Roberts, for example, a man who was like a brother to her, said, you know, there's only room for one Ralph in your life, and that's me. We have this direct from Marilyn herself. This is a tactic of a psychiatrist that is dangerous in a therapeutic relationship and absolutely lethal in any other. So it's a tangled and difficult and dreadful relationship to try to chronicle.
Another claim, she had problems and was addicted to drugs and booze.
Marilyn Monroe was not an alcoholic. In fact, she could not take strong drink. She could take an occasional sip of champagne. She was one of these people, in fact, who reacted very badly to liquor. She was not a pill-popping addict. She never took amphetamines, for example, uppers. She had a problem with sleeping pills, as did and do many people, indeed, in Hollywood. What needs to be said is that Marilyn Monroe was a decent and honorable woman who was not a woman of easy virtue, and as a matter of fact, who was never a sexual plaything to be passed around for anyone. This, I think, has to do with male sexual fantasies about a beautiful, sexy blonde, believing that she can't possibly be any good or any, decent human being. In fact, she was witty. In fact, she was intelligent, she was loyal. She spent her whole life making a series of moves in which she tried to better herself, to struggle against a difficult childhood and against almost impossible odds of being typecast as a sex symbol in Hollywood.
And it should be noted you didn't begin this as a fan, even though you wound up one.
Right.
The book is Marilyn Monroe, the biography. Donald Spoto, thanks very much.
The Los Angeles District Attorney reopens the investigation into Marilyn Monroe's death in 1982, 20 years after the fact, when Time and Again continues.
The Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office said today Marilyn Monroe's suicide in 1962 is being reinvestigated because of her missing diary and because of allegations that the death certificate signature had been coerced. Here's Heidi Schulman in Los Angeles.
Los Angeles County supervisors called for the new investigation after a flurry of publicity given charges Marilyn Monroe was murdered. A private detective offered $10,000 for her missing diary, claiming it had information about government dealings with gangsters and a plot to kill Fidel Castro. Information he said she got from Robert and John Kennedy. Gossip linked Monroe romantically to the Kennedy brothers, and a friend who claims he read the diary says she was about to tell all when she died.
That diary, I would say, would contribute greatly to her death.
The detective theorizes someone in the CIA killed Monroe to keep her quiet. That's at odds with the coroner's report, which said she died from an overdose of sleeping pills. But news stories that a coroner's investigator said he was coerced into signing the death certificate prompted supervisors to call for a new probe.
To me, after 20 years, it's time to clear up this case once and for all.
An assistant district attorney is reviewing the information in the case, but he says that 20 years after Marilyn Monroe's death, it is so stale it would take huge resources to uncover anything new. Heidi Schulman, NBC News, Los Angeles.
And nothing new was discovered, although speculation surrounding Monroe's death continues to this day. The late actor Robert Mitchum never had to speculate about Marilyn Monroe. He was a close and trusted friend who had known her since, well, let's hear Mitchum tell the story to today's Gene Shalit in 1983.
I loved her. We were very good friends. Funny girl. Really funny. And of course, I'd known her since she was about 15.
How's that?
When I was working at Lockheed, my shaper partner, Jim Doherty, was married to her. It was his wife.
You were working at Lockheed on a big punch press or something?
On a shaper. On, shaping sheet metal. And Jim would show me pictures of his wife. Then we went to a Lockheed dance, and that's where I met her.
And the guy in the next machine was married to Marilyn Monroe?
He was my shaper partner. We were in the same booth.
She wasn't Marilyn Monroe then?
No, Jim Doherty. She was about 15, I guess. Then I knew her ever after, and finally worked with her. She was a nice girl. I liked Marilyn. She was very fond of me. I was one of her trusted friends. And I was in New York, and she was here at the Waldorf Towers. And she called me up and wanted to talk to me. And I never got around to it. So, of course, the next thing I know, she's gone. And I saw Pat Newcomb down in Washington. And she was Mrs. Kennedy's secretary, I guess, at that time. And I had lunch with her, a long lunch. And she said, Marilyn really wanted to talk to you. She really needed to talk to you. It made me feel great. Meanwhile, she had left us. First night she ever came over to my house, she came over with Nick Ray. It was like New Year's Eve. And she walked across the room to the fireplace. She'd taken her coat off, walked across the room to the fireplace, and turned her backside of the fireplace and lifted up her skirt, warm herself, tickled the hell out of the kids. But she did it with totally ingenuous,
Remembering Marilyn in 1987, 25 years after her death, when we return in a moment.
She was a star of such enduring brightness that 25 years after her death, her first name alone is enough of an introduction. Marilyn. Marilyn Monroe, who once said, "I have too many fantasies to be a housewife. I guess I'm a fantasy, in death as well as in life." NBC's Bill Schechner tonight remembers Marilyn.
At the cemetery today, it was clear Marilyn Monroe's grip on the imagination remains.
She had a mystical value. The camera loved her.
I wanna be loved by you just...
She defined sex appeal for a generation, but it had a soft, silly side. Often cast as a dumb blonde, what came through was vulnerability.
Then there's gin and vermouth. That's a martini.
That sounds cool. I think I'll have a glass of that. A big, tall one.
Big, tall martini.
That old black magic.
In real life, Marilyn Monroe was a little girl lost. Born Norma Jean Baker, raised in a foster home, abused as a child, she worked on her image, desperately wanting to be a star. She became famous. She remained unhappy. "I want to be an actress," she once said, "not a celluloid aphrodisiac."
Running wild, lost control, running wild.
When Monroe passed 30, she feared for her beauty and fame. At 36, she committed suicide. The mystique grew, fed by rumors of an alleged relationship with President John Kennedy. Sex, stardom, sadness. A recipe for an enduring pop legend. In this case, the legend is Marilyn Monroe. Bill Schechner, NBC News, New York.
Norma Jean Baker died on August 5th, 1962. She would be in her early 70s now, but her creation lives on, still young and sexy, still beautiful, complicated, and sad. Marilyn Monroe will be with us for a long, long time. That's time and again for now. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jane Pauley, and we're History.
The thing I like the most is to become a real actress. And I remember when I was a kid, sitting in the front row at the movies on Saturday afternoon. And I would never come out of the movie. They'd have to come and get me, and I'd sit in the front row. And I think how wonderful it would be to be an actress and so forth.
When they give you the eye, and just to show that I care, I will write and declare that I'm on the loose, but I'll stay on the square. I'd be lonely, but even though I'm lonely, there'll be no other guy. Though I'll be gone for a while, I know that I'll be smiling with my baby by and by.